What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff. I'm your host, Christian Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Gabe Coon. Gabe, what is up, my brother? I missed you last week.
No, man, nothing much. I missed you too, man. You got some you got the little natural blush going on.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's from Nashville. Probably not Nashville.
It's not. It's from a long day out in the sun working today, not from Nashville. Didn't catch too much sun in Nashville. Was primarily indoors for that trip.
Was it fun? Did you have a good time?
It was a good time. It's bachelor trips are kind of a sprint that should be a marathon, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get it.
And it was Michael, my best friend Michael. It was his about to be brother-in-law. So it's the guy that's marrying his sister. And so he's 3 years younger than us. So it was like half my group of friends that he's friends with, and then half of like his 21, 22, 23-year-old friends. So we had some people that were a little wilder than others. But
anybody get arrested?
Nobody got arrested.
Oh, damn.
No arrests.
Yucks.
We are 4-0 on bachelor trips with no arrests.
Okay. So. In Nashville, you never know. Public drunkenness is very apparent there. That happens a lot.
So when's the last time you went to Nashville? And my
bachelor party.
Recently?
It was last year.
So the first time we went was 2021. This was my third Nashville bachelor trip. Had 4 total, 3 of them in Nashville.
Jeez, God.
Yeah.
You have a predictable friend group. Good God.
Very much so. But the first time we went, it was like, yeah, this is crazy. Like, there's a lot of people here. But it's progressively grown so much over the last several years. Like, when we first went, pretty much everybody you meet's like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. Like, everybody's from the South. And now it was like this last time we went, we met people from Boston. We met people from Oregon. I think we met like 25 or 30 people that were from Australia. Like, it is, and anybody you ask is like, why are you in Nashville? Like, you're from where, fill in the blank. And they're like, well, we heard this is the party town. So like, this is where people come now. So it has become much more than just a regional vacation / party spot. Like, it is a very happening place.
Well, yeah, because they take all the state funds that could go to everywhere in Tennessee, and they're like, hey, Nashville, do you want these?
Yeah.
You can have them. Titans are getting like a $2.6 billion stadium. I don't even know if it's a reno. I think it might be just a brand new stadium. I haven't even really looked into it. But, man, they just get a hell of a lot of money, and they have a lot of development, and everybody goes and visits said development. And everybody's been moving there forever.
Yeah.
I think it's still like the millennial capital of the damn world. Definitely the U.S.
It's insane, dude. It like I said, a few years ago, it was way more chill, and now it's too much. Like, it's over, to me at least.
It's overkill.
Who's very homebody, like, it is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I'm not one that wants to wait 35, 40 minutes to get in a place that I don't care about being in the first place. So it was fun. It was a good time. But as we know, like, bachelor trips and going out and stuff like that aren't necessarily my scene. My bachelor trip will not be in Nashville. I've already decided mine is.
We're talking about bachelor trips. I love this.
Mine's going to be. Mine's 100% going to be in Sandusky, Ohio. Which is where I can't think of the theme park right now, but it's like the number one.
You know what? When I think that Sandusky, Ohio, you know what I think of is Tommy Boy.
Yeah,
seen Tommy Boy? Yeah. Isn't that Sandusky?
I think so. I think so. But I don't know why I can't think of the amusement park right now. But it's like the here. You're
gonna go to an amusement park?
Dude,
why don't you go to Branson, Missouri, buddy.
No, if I'm gonna go, I want to go to the best one, Cedar Point. That's what it's called.
Don't they have like the fastest?
Yes.
The fastest roller coaster in the U.S.
Yeah. And okay, take that back. Sorry, I've been to 5 bachelor trips, 3 in Nashville. 1
Your friends are just gonna be like, dude, Sandusky, Ohio.
No, they're
fired up about it.
Yes, because we've all started to transition out of like, this is not what we want to do anymore. Like, we'd rather do something together. Like, we're on a bachelor trip. Let's hang out. Let's chill. Enjoy the camaraderie. not just try to go balls to the walls for 72 hours or whatever. So everybody's like, absolutely can't wait for yours. This is going to be so much more chill. But I never would have thought of doing it at an amusement park. But last year I went to one in St. Louis and we did Six Flags for 2 days. And I felt like a 10-year-old. And I was like, this is incredible. And then Cedar Point, me and we talked about going there since we were in like middle school or high school. So that will be the location for mine. We will play golf and we will ride rides. And that's going to be wonderful.
Wait, so Sandusky have a decent golf scene too? I hope.
I have no idea.
You have no idea. You're gonna go to like some municipal course that's like treated like shit. Sandusky, Ohio. This is hilarious.
10-hour drive.
And I mean, at least you have your plan. You have it all planned out.
Yeah, I would get like all my favorite things. I get long road trips, which I love long road trips, golf, amusement parks. Like that's good food, good dinners, because nobody ever wants to go anywhere good to eat on bachelor trips. It's like,
yeah, you just want something quick.
How quick can we get food so we can go out? And that will not be mine. It'd be like thought out. What are the best steak restaurants in town? That's where we're going. Like mine's going to be a way different speed.
In Sandusky, buddy, you're going to end up at an Outback Steakhouse. Come on. Hey, do they have good steak restaurants there in Sandusky?
I don't know.
You're just going to look it up and play it by ear. Get Open Table. Get the Open Table app. So
exactly.
Or something.
Exactly. Well, that was my last weekend. What about your this weekend, Gabe? How was?
It was good. I'm headed to Destin though.
The
end of the week, so
vacation
I'll have a nice
for you as well.
A little vacation. It'll be nice. Get some sun before the summer ends. It'll be nice. It'll be week 0. I'll have some college football on the tube. We hyped up for that.
Yeah.
A little bit of Florida State and Georgia Tech. Delaware State and Hawaii.
Beautiful.
Nevada, SMU, and there's one more I'm not thinking of right this second. It's New Mexico and somebody else. And I think they're going to get their ass kicked by an FC. It's Montana State. New Mexico versus Montana State.
They probably will.
Montana State's going to kick their ass.
Yeah, because they're terrible.
So
speaking of, before I forget on this topic, you mentioned week 0, and we've been talking about Nashville, and that kind of sparked. I will be back in Nashville in 2 weeks for yet another bachelor trip.
Okay, have fun.
For week 1 of college
That's
football.
too much. I mean, it'll be fun, but that's too much. It's too much Nashville in a short period of time. I'll say that. I can't do 2-3-day weekends in 3 weeks in that place. Going absurd. That type of speed, hell no.
Pretty absurd.
Miss me with that. All right, real, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was just gonna say. So, needless to say, this weekend that I just had was way more chill, way more slow this weekend than the past weekend, because now I got to prepare for another one. So this weekend, all it was go out to eat, chill, fantasy football draft on Saturday. That was it for this past weekend.
Yeah, I need to get my fantasy football teams in order, but I know our listeners don't give a damn about our fantasy football teams.
No,
unfortunately, it's unfortunate. You should care. Here at 92.9 ESPN, by the way, I am the defending champ. I have my belt somewhere around here.
Yeah.
I have to go find it. I have to pluck it off the wall. I've had it on display just to let them know before we do our draft, before we do our fantasy draft.
All right, Gabe, anything else? Are you ready to jump in?
Let's hop in. We have some Memphis basketball to talk about.
Let's do it. Let's talk a little bit of Memphis basketball, some schedule notes coming out. They will play an exhibition game against Alabama. I believe the date is October 28th. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I believe that's right. And also, we now know who they will play in Maui to begin, and that will be UConn. So pretty tough draw to start the Maui Invitational. Gabe, any thoughts on some of these schedule notes?
Let's start with the Alabama thing, because I think this is actually more important than we're led to believe, because it's an exhibition October 28th. But I think it's nice now that Penny and the staff understand, before we're getting together like this island of misfit toys. We're getting together all these different pieces from around the country. We need to play some real competition.
Right.
Like Christian Brothers and Lemoyne Owen, no offense, love their programs, love that they're in the city of Memphis, support them as well, but won't do it. You know what I mean? You need to have somebody else, like a really good look, like a top 25 team, an NCAA tournament caliber team before you actually get to season. And I know how we are in Memphis when it comes to this basketball program. There will be overreaction, win or lose, to that in that Alabama exhibition. But I want to warn people against that before we even come close to that game. Who gives a damn? It's an exhibition. I don't want to see them get their ass kicked, but even in that case, like how many times have we seen Division I teams in an exhibition lose to a D2 school and be fine? Yeah. How many times have we seen Michigan State lose to a crappy out-of-conference team? They're still fine by the time they get to the tournament.
Right.
Win or lose, I don't really think that's going to reflect exactly what this team's going to be like heading into the season. We get takeaways, but this needs to be on the back burner, I think, for a lot of people, when in reality, because it might be, streamed, because you can buy tickets to it, it's going to be part of like a fundraising event. I think people will overreact to it, and I'm just trying to get out ahead of that because nothing annoys me more.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, but I'm also in agreement with you that this is important. This is a good thing. This is a good development for the University of Memphis basketball program. And if you had, a team that was carried over and you had, the majority of the same roster, maybe it wouldn't be as big of a deal. And you would just say, okay, kind of gets them back into a rhythm, but we know what to expect from them. But when you're doing these entirely swapped out brand new rosters with guys who have never played an organized game together, like you said, starting off against Christian Brothers, Lemoyne Owen, it gives you a game look, like it gives you a game feel. But it doesn't really prepare you for what you could see down the stretch, whether that's out of conference play, if you're playing some of the more decent teams in the
conference. Like the schedule they have, this out of conference schedule they have this year.
Right, exactly. Like more so for the out of conference than for the interconference schedule. But it prepares you for that. And instead of having to adjust to those live bullets in a game that matters against your record, you get to do it against a really quality opponent in a game that has no merit on the rest of the season at all. And I think that's very helpful for a team of entirely new players that have never played together to get to see that level of competition before games actually count.
Yeah, and I just think generally this is something you're going to see going forward for a lot of programs, not just Memphis. I think Memphis is going to be out front trying to schedule these games, maybe multiple of these games going into the future, because Penny understands it. And he said it, earlier this offseason that he wants to do stuff like this. But with the transfer portal being as prevalent as it is, you have to do this.
Yeah.
I think it is an absolute necessity to make sure that you schedule somebody as an exhibition that's going to give you a good look. And Alabama will certainly give this team a hellacious look. That's going to be one of the best teams in college basketball this year, in my opinion.
Yep. I think that pretty much does it for that conversation. So now I want to hear your thoughts on Maui. I know we confused Kenny a little bit on the ticker, but Memphis does open the Maui Invitational with UConn. Not a very favorable draw to say.
Yeah, two-time back-to-back national champion UConn. I mean, whatever. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to be able to see somebody that damn good early in your non-con, but shit, man. I don't want this team to get their ass kicked by UConn and be completely defeated by the time they get to the second game of the Maui Invitational.
Yeah.
Because that is, I hate to say it, that's entirely possible, man. That's a plausible reality for what this team's going to have to go through in the early going. And that's going to, you have Mizzou, UNLV, San Fran, then UConn.
Yeah.
Fourth game of the year. Like, I think, yes, it's fun. Yes, it's cool to have that game scheduled, but I hate to have this opinion but I think it's true. It's also a very important game for your season. It is. Yeah. Because you can't afford to just go in there and show that you can't compete. You can't have a Villanova type loss like you had last year.
Right.
Like, you have to go in there and compete against a team like that, or you will show early to some of the people that do these projections and run the numbers, Bart Torvik, you'll show them that, man, I don't know if this team can compete with the top of the sport. Now, my assumption is that they can stay in the game. I don't think this will be like a 13, 14-point line. I think it'll be right around like 6.5, 7, because UConn lost a lot last year. No more Donovan Clingan, no more Stephon Castle, no more Cam Spencer. Like, they lost a lot on their roster, and they really kept Alex Caravan around, which was big. They brought in Terrace Reed from Michigan. They have a couple of other pieces they got out of high school and on the transfer portal. This is not a team that I think is going to three-peat as a college basketball national champion, but it's still going to be a very tough game. And I think what it's going to come down to is Penny's going to have his work cut out for him with Danny Hurley on the other sideline, man. Yeah. That's because I think talent-wise, like they can stick in the game against UConn, but it's going to come down to how are we managing rotations, how are we managing the game, and that comes down to the coach. That comes down to Penny Hardaway, comes down to Danny Hurley on the other side.
Yeah, and speaking, you hit on the Villanova loss last year, and that was a terrible game for Memphis, but with everything surrounding it, both before and after it, a lot of us really overlooked that game. And I mean, I remember even after it happened, us talking about it and being like, tournament style, they just had a dud. Like, it's not that big of a deal. They just had a dud. And I don't think we read enough into that. And clearly it came and kind of reared its ugly head throughout the season, that maybe Memphis wasn't exactly the team that we thought they were. And so I think that's an interesting point to say, you don't have to go out there and beat UConn. You're probably not going to be expected to beat the back-to-back defending national champion team, but to be competitive in that game and to look like you belong on the same floor as that team in that tournament style environment, which once again, and that's what it's all about, right? I mean, it ends in a tournament style environment. So you have to be able to adapt to that environment, and just letting a team off the hook with saying, okay, 3 games in 3 days, not in the location that you used to playing in, travel, everything that comes with that, whether, just from the travel itself to everything that you can do while you're there and enjoy while you're there. I don't think those are excuses that we can make this year. I think we were a little bit naive to it last year and allowed that to kind of slip up. And I think in an environment like this with really, really high caliber teams involved in this tournament, we need to keep a better eye on it this year. And even though it's early in the season, even though things definitely changed between November and March, it's still a really good litmus test for where you're at and how you can adapt to a tournament style environment, which, like I said, at the end of the day, that's where it all ends. So if you can't play well in a tournament style environment, you're not going to go very far anyway.
You go straight from conference tournament straight into the NCAA tournament. If you win around one game, you have 1 day off. So yeah, I agree with you, man. We really didn't put enough stock into that last year and how this team was built to deal with the harder parts of their schedule where they didn't have as many days off in the heart of conference. So I think this year we're going to be a little bit more in tune with that. But I will say this: you look at Bart Torvik right now. Memphis and UConn aren't that far apart.
They're not.
It kind of blows me away. Memphis at 25, UConn at 12.
Yeah.
Like that on the surface of it, it surprises you, sure. But it does show, like, and I think Bart's pretty good with his projections. It does show, like, even the metrics think that Memphis can stick in that game. But we're going to have to see what it looks like by the time we get to season. Who's on the floor, who's playing well, that whole thing. But Danny Hurley versus Penny Hardaway, I'm going to say it. People are going to get pissed off. I don't give a damn. That's a coaching mismatch. Sorry. It just is. Guy won 2 back-to-back national champ. I think it says more about how good Danny Hurley is.
Right.
That's what it does. But it's a coaching mismatch. And I want to see how Penny handles that, because as you get to the later part of the season, you get into the NCAA tournament. There's no real bad coaches in the NCAA tournament. You have to be able to out-coach them, and he'll have a chance to do that against Danny Hurley during the season. Now, I think with this too, how much do you think we know about this team by the time we get to 2025? So you'll have Mizzou, UNLV, San Fran, Maui Invitational, then the new year. I think we'll know just about all we need to know about this team at that particular moment. Now, last year, we didn't quite know as much as we should have about that team even after the new year. But this year, I think it'll be pretty apparent how this team, what this team's ceiling is, at least.
Yeah, and I think last year is going to teach us a lot for how we analyze these teams. And I'm not talking about Memphis necessarily in particular, but just specifically these teams that are fully turnover roster, transfers, almost 100% transfers. I think there has to be a little bit more depth on the way that we analyze them. I don't think everything can be taken at face value like a team that's been the same for 2 or 3 years, because you kind of know what you're getting with them. It is so unprecedented to have multiple teams in the country that are completely turned over. And so in those games where we say, okay, that was a surprising win, or that was a surprising loss, or this was a little bit surprising, I think with teams like Memphis, I think we have to read more into those, because I think those game-to-game changes and impacts are more meaningful and tell more of a story than they do for a team that's primarily comprised of the same exact players that it was in years past. So I think with that being said, like in this early season schedule before we get to the new year, I think every game's got to be broken down on an individual basis. And if we're starting to see trends that could be justified as a little bit scary, I think we've got to lean more into those rather than saying they'll be fine. They're a really talented team. Look who they've beat already this season.
Right.
Because I think even outside of that Villanova loss, I think there were other metrics and other things that you could have.
Their defense was terrible the whole year.
And that's what I'm referring to. If you went in then and looked at their defense a little bit deeper, which we knew the metrics, we knew the stats, but if we said, okay, how can this turn out? How can this turn negatively? Rather than look who they beat, and they're a top 10 team in the country. I'm not worried about the defensive metrics. It's like, no, we have to put more stock in what this team does on a game-to-game basis than the majority of teams in the country, or at least, the majority of teams in years past.
No more of the bullshit we were doing last year. Just keep winning, right? No more of that, dude. You can't do that anymore. We've seen this team implode from the inside out because of ignoring those things.
100%.
And it's not because we were ignoring those things. It's just like we didn't
see
prepare ourselves for what could have become with how badly they were playing defense last year. So, yeah, I agree with you, man. Like, as much as I want to sit here and just say, okay, if they just win all their damn games, they'll be fine. Like, if they just win, they'll be okay. Like, we do need to dig into the stats, the numbers, the efficiency, offensively and defensively, a little bit more and understand what's going on with this team so we can foresee what these matchups look like on a game-to-game basis, like you were sort of mentioning. But, yeah, it's got to look good. Even if they're playing an Arkansas State or a Louisiana Tech, who's supposed to be pretty good this year, both teams actually supposed to be pretty solid in their respective conferences. Like, those have to be good-looking wins. They can't just be wins by one and us chalk it up to, they escaped. Right. Don't worry about it. No, you need to worry about it.
Yeah, because we did that. Not even with, once again, outside the Villanova loss, there were really close games to teams that
close against Wichita State and all these teams, man. Yeah. I mean, for a while, Javon Quinterly had to just go put up every game-winning three-pointer he could for a couple of games. He had 2 buzzer beaters in those first 4 or 5 games in conference.
Right. But we've talked a lot about basketball game. That season's still pretty far away, but we've got another one that is not far away at all. What, a week and a half now? A little over a week and a half we're looking at before week 1 of the college football season, which means we'll finally see the University of Memphis football team back in action. What do you think?
I think
scrimmage recently.
I think highly of them. They had a scrimmage, actually, their second scrimmage in the Liberty Bowl, and the Liberty Bowl looks crazy, by the way.
Yes, it
Simmons
does.
Bank Liberty Stadium, the Sim looks insane. Did you see the press box come down?
I did. I watched the video of it coming down.
Were you just saying wild. Good riddance? Hell yes.
That thing was rough.
It got bad after a while.
It did.
It really did. I still love seeing the people that are like, oh, so many memories in that press box. I'm like, well, let them be memories, because that thing needs a fucking makeover.
Leave those there.
But they had a scrimmage. Looks like Mario Anderson Jr. really coming through. Looks like a lead back. Not surprising. Offensive line. I was talking to Tim Cramsey about this. But, Ryan's been saying they have some depth on the offensive line. I don't think we're really latching on to really how much depth they have. I asked him, how many guys, like, truthfully, would you throw out in a starting lineup tomorrow on an individual basis? Obviously, you want the best 5 that work together. That's what O-line is. But he said 8, which is, like, I don't think people understand. That's insane. Yeah. That is hard.
You know how many
8 guys that you trust in game?
It's usually 6, right? It's usually your starting 5 and a swing tackle.
If that, there's some teams in the group of 5 that can barely trust 4, and they have to play 5.
Correct.
Like 8 is a lot. That's a bunch. That's what like Bama has. Like
exactly.
that's what teams like Georgia have. That's really good at the group of 5 level. But it doesn't surprise me. They brought in a lot of guys with a lot of experience, and it makes some sense. I guess another thing that I took away from my conversation with Tim Cramsey is that and I heard this was sort of the case at the scrimmage at the Liberty Bowl. There's really some give and take. Like it's not just one side of the ball getting after the other. Sounds like the defense is making some plays. Offense probably making a few more plays because they're more experienced. But there's really some like give and take, some real good competition. And I know most coaches say that, sort of cliche this time of year. But, you know, I had camps. Let me just say this. I had camps where as an offense, we got after the defense's ass, and we went into the year just saying this defense is going to suck. So we're going to have to score 7 touchdowns a game. We're going to have to get to 42 points, and then we're going to have to hold on for dear life. You know, and it sounds like this team doesn't quite have that issue at this particular moment.
Yeah, I think starting this offseason, obviously I was optimistic from the beginning, but I think the closer that we get to the season, and not only from just what the coaches are saying, but also just continuing to look at this roster and this depth chart and what they can be, like I continue to get more and more optimistic. And that's with trying to have a caveat with everything, because I know I've covered this team for 5-6 years now. So it's like, am I too close to see this for what it is? Do I need to pull back and, try to play devil's advocate on some of these things? But the closer we get to the season, the more optimistic I am about the potential success of this team, because I've tried and I still just don't see a standout weakness on this team on paper. And despite all the success that Memphis has had in years past, I've never been able to look and say, okay, I don't have a concern anywhere. There was at least a position or a position group where it'd be like, okay, I don't have confidence in what they can do as a whole. I remember multiple years looking at secondary rotations, or specifically safeties, or specifically an outside corner, or specifically defensive tackles, or whatever the case may be, and saying, I don't think this is going to work because of that. It might not hold them back from being a good team, but that's going to be the weakness. And when I look at this roster from top to bottom, the quarterback position, the offensive line depth, the top end talent in the wide receiver room, the 2 running backs, the mass transfers of secondary players that were brought in that have had success at other stops and have, by all accounts, been very impressive throughout the spring, summer, and fall camp. The linebacker unit, the defensive line rotation. Like I don't see one. I don't look at a specific group or a specific position and say, I do not feel good at all about this, whatever that is, position group or position at all. I just don't see any.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they have the bodies, and they have like the size to, I think, really they have more size on the offensive and defensive line that I think can actually compete even in the, game that they play against Florida State. They're not going to be as deep, and they're going to have to rotate bodies that may not be ready for that type of competition, but I think their top end all have that type of size. The 2 things I'm worried about is just secondary, how's that going to look? How are they going to mesh? And then, the other part is just pass rush, generate some pass rush. But I thought they brought in some guys to go make that happen. Reggie Grimes, Cormonte Hamilton could have a big year. I think Derek Hunter as a 3 technique. I think that's a guy who could sneakily get after the pass, would be a very productive interior defensive lineman this year, because he's slender. I don't know if you ever stood around him. 6'5", 280 pounds. It doesn't look like there's much fat on the guy. Like he can really go make some things happen. I know a good penetrator up the middle. I say penetrate, and I just know that you're going to crack a smile. But he really can make it happen. What? Say it again.
I wasn't going to until you said
I don't know, man. Some of these words, like football jargon, I swear, just has so much innuendo. It's ridiculous.
It truthfully does.
It's nuts. Like you hear someone call a game, and if you don't, you have to try to turn off your juvenile brain.
Yeah.
Your juvenile brain to like listen to Troy Aikman call a game or something. But yeah, no, I think Derek Hunter can go make something happen up front. But that's the other thing. I want to see them get some pass rush, consistent pass rush, and that could help out the secondary. I think those things will work hand in hand. Now, did you see? Got to ask you this over the weekend.
Yeah.
Boise State, who's probably, biggest competition for Memphis to get that group of 5 spot in the college football playoff. They ended up naming Maddox Madsen their starter. And if you'll remember, Malachi Nelson, who was the 5-star #1 recruit in the ESPN 300 in 2023, committed to USC to be the next heir apparent to Caleb Williams and the Lincoln Riley QB Heisman factory. He went there, he transferred there. He loses out to Maddox Madsen, who was their starter last year. That blew me away. And honestly, my biggest takeaway, and I know this is Memphis on the brain, but that's just how I operate. I think that's a good sign. That's a good thing for Memphis. Great thing for Memphis.
It's very good because even if Maddox Madsen has played incredible throughout fall camp and earned the job and is solid this year, his upside is nowhere near.
That ceiling for them just went way down. And I think their floor is high. Don't get it twisted. Their floor is about 8 wins.
Agreed. But your ceiling lowers. You don't have the same ceiling as you will with Malachi Nelson because he's a former 5-star quarterback and, projected draft pick and projected to be successful at the collegiate level. And it has to make you wonder, like, is he fraudulent? Like,
is he mids? Like, is he just? I don't know what's wrong with the guy.
Because
my thought, though, and this is me trying to give him benefit of the doubt, and I want to bounce this off you because I'm not going to give him too much benefit of the doubt. He's a 5-star #1 quarterback recruit that can't start at Boise State over a 3-star. Like, that's just not normal. That's not normal behavior. Okay, no. So there's got to be a little bit of fraudulent to him right this second. But how much of this is you get into college, Lincoln Riley system, you get discouraged. Now you're in a brand new offensive system at 19 years old. 2 offensive systems, 2 sets of offensive coordinators, 2 sets of different play calls and terminology. That's hard for a 19-year-old to really grasp onto. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the big things holding him back.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, like, let's look at the pedigree, right? Top 5 quarterback in the class, went to USC, was, like you said, the heir apparent behind Caleb Williams. There's a very similar situation, and I get these 2 names mixed up all the time, but it's also a former 5-star in Dante Moore, who did play some at UCLA last year, was a bit up and down, got replaced at times, but you saw the flashes from him. I can't remember who they played against, but I remember watching one of those late night games with him in it and just being like, oh my gosh, like, the arm talent on this dude is insane. And where did he land? He landed at Oregon, right? I mean, that makes sense. He made a pretty lateral, honestly, an upward trajectory move going to Oregon. You're looking at a 5-star from USC that transferred to Boise State. That to me, and I could be totally wrong, it could just be that's what felt like home to him, and they had a good package, They had a good pitch, whatever. But that just doesn't sound like a 5-star quarterback. And that's a downward move. At worst, you would expect from a redshirt freshman who didn't play a lateral move. But a downward move, I think it at least brings in some questions of, is he not the player that he was thought to be when he was
No, I think that is true. Like, I do truly believe that he's not the player that he's cracked up to be. If you're the #1 quarterback recruit and you can't start at Boise State, you're not that guy.
Right.
But I do, like, I also am a guy who tries to shoot a little bit of bail to guys because they are young.
Correct.
And they can learn. And it doesn't mean that they're, like, completely done for in college football. But also, like, if you really read the signs of him leaving USC, you started to see, like, damn, Lincoln Riley was recruiting over him. Like, Juju Lewis, this guy that he has committed to him right now, like, he recruited him thinking that Malachi was going to be the starter this year. He didn't give a damn.
Right.
But Miller Moss took it over, and then, I guess that Juju Lewis is going to be the next guy in once he finishes up high school. But he recruited right over him. Didn't really give a damn. Now, with that, I'm not saying Boise State can't be the group of 5 represented in the college football playoff, although I have my questions, my doubts, serious doubts now. I was starting to think about this, like who else, who have we been missing in these conversations that you think we should be talking about more? Is it Tulane? Is it UTSA?
I genuinely, I don't think we're missing anything. Like
I've seen some people even go as far as Texas State, but that feels like USF to me. It's just, really dark horse. Like
it's just too far.
Yeah.
And of course, like we've watched college football our whole lives. Like we know something crazy can happen and there can just be some diamond in the rough at UTSA or Tulane or just fill in the blank school name. And if you catch lightning in a bottle, you catch lightning in a bottle and it happens. Like it's not unheard of at all. But just looking at schedules and talent, depth chart, all these things, to me, I don't think we're overlooking anybody. I think there's too many question marks at UTSA and Tulane to put them in the same category as Boise State and Memphis and Liberty. I really think those are by far and away the top 3 contenders right now. I don't think anyone else is really close. Now, of course, that can change. Those, there will be teams that are surprising that we're not talking about right now. That will happen. But just as far as surface level going into the season, it's a 3-horse race to me.
Yeah. Okay. And I think Tulane would be the 4th horse, right, for the most part.
For me, in my opinion.
But then they have questions, quarterback and coaching. Now John Sumrall. So, but they could get it all going. John Sumrall's a great coach, and he's not taking over a bad program by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all. All right, Gabe. Well, I think that wraps up our University of Memphis talk this week. I don't even have an interesting segue to get us out of here. I didn't have enough time to think of
We're just going to talk to Kenny next. I think that's interesting enough, right?
That's it. Talking to Kenny with the Hot 3 after this.
For the next 2 seasons, are we officially referring to Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium as the Liberty Hole?
I think Liberty Hole is hilarious. I just don't know if what they have constitutes as a hole, because it's half the damn
It's a hole in a stadium.
It's bigger than a hole.
The seats that are still there, are those
like
coming?
The chairbacks?
Are they coming out or are they staying?
No, they're my parents sit there. They will be sitting there.
Who is going to sit there?
My parents 100% will be in those seats. The sun will no longer disappear. TJ and I will be fried every week. How weird is it going to be to just be like looking out straight at the Coliseum?
Wild.
That's the.
I think the best part though is we'll be able to keep an eye on our cars right there because we do park in direct sight line of.
That is true.
That opening, so we'll be able to see if anything fishy's going on. No lie, if something happened, I would sprint across the field straight through there to that opening and straight to my vehicle.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
No Christmas Day game for the Grizzlies. And not that upset me. I mean, I'm fine not playing on Christmas. But it just keeps feeling like it's piling up that we are a forgotten team. And we're a forgotten team with a forgotten star. This is the year to remind them. LFG! Exclamation point.
Dang, you started like that today. Okay.
Let's go.
It's
the Remind Me Tour.
Hey, no
Grizzlies are on tour this season. It's the Remind Me Tour. Go ahead and start the hashtag. Hashtag Remind Me. Because the Grizzlies are going to remind them who they are.
Tune in to the Night Court Podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
G'day.
I am so mad at y'all.
Why?
Y'all are just so lucky I didn't get into the first segment. I'm so mad at y'all.
What do we do?
What do we do?
I have never met 2 people that are so ready to chalk up 2 losses to the Memphis Tiger basketball program in the preseason. They're about to play UConn, baby. Let's go. This is exciting.
Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Kenny. This is how you open up your appearance right here for the hot. What the hell are you talking about?
I'm just so mad at
What do you mean chalk up 2 losses?
Y'all are
First
just
of all,
Debbie
it's 1 loss
Downers.
if we're even chalking it up right now.
Yeah, the other one you can't even lose.
Y'all are such Debbie Downers. Just Debbie
How am I a downer? Good
just
God, Kenny,
already.
are you the guy? Are you the guy on social media that always comes after me when I talk about Memphis?
I have multiple burner accounts.
Are you the guy, first name, bunch of numbers, that always hits me up when I talk about Penny and the Tigers?
I just don't understand. It's like, well, we don't know. Come on, they're gonna beat UConn and win the national championship this year. What are you talking about?
So it's that.
I know you don't even mean that. So like, you better you check yourself. Kenny
Kenny is secretly the biggest troll of all time. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
God.
All right, y'all ready to get to the hot three?
Of course we are. After that, yes, absolutely.
All right, we had a little bit of a UFC fight this weekend. UFC 305 happened was it in Perth, Australia, right? Or Perth, New Zealand? Is it New Zealand or Australia?
No, it's Australia.
Is it Australia?
Australia.
Okay, it's in Australia.
Aussie.
Oi, oi,
you got
oi.
it stuck if you don't. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
There we go.
I got to watch a little bit of it. I'll be frank with you guys. I was sick all week last week. And so I was doped up and drugged up. And so I didn't get to see a bunch of I kind of fell asleep halfway through it. But obviously Israel Adesanya fought Dracus Duplessis in the main event for the what? Not the heavyweight. Middleweight. Thank you. I was like, what weight class are they? The middleweight championship belt, the belt that Israel Adesanya has fought for and won many, many times. He lost, guys. What are y'all's thoughts about this card and about the main event in general?
I'm going to go first off, and I'm just going to put this disclaimer out there. I love the Stubblefields to death, but y'all have, as a unit, y'all have the weakest immune system as a family of all time.
It's crazy.
Yeah. You gotta stop washing your hands, dude.
Seriously.
Hold up that.
They are sick probably every other month.
It's crazy.
One of the Stubblefields is sick every other month.
Yeah, it was me this time.
Chamomile tea. Do you have like some teas?
Dude, I thought I tested 4 times for COVID. Never tested positive for COVID, but I still, like, from last Saturday to like even today, still woke up and was like, I still don't feel very good. Like,
and you're saying you got that voice, you got that horse.
You got that sick voice.
Yeah, man, it's been rough. So that last Monday, when we sat down and had our conversation, Gabe, without Christian, for this podcast, I was like, I was out of it. Anyway, but no, back to the fights.
Okay.
Yes, we're always sick. What are y'all's thoughts, man? Is Israel cooked?
I'm gonna hit a couple of little points real quick, and then we'll spend the rest of the time talking about the main event. I was really happy for Dan Hooker that he was able to beat Mateusz Gamrot.
What a fight!
Because Gamrot's.
Who did you have in that fight? I want to know honestly.
I mean, Gamrot. I thought Gamrot would win.
I thought Gamrot won.
I thought. Oh, you thought Gamrot won the fight?
Yeah.
I thought it was really close.
I thought it was very close, but I thought Gamrot would get the ultimate. Well, but obviously Dan Hooker in front of the home crowd.
Right.
The cheering sort of got to the officials.
Yeah, it was cool to see him win because he has been a little bit up and down over the last several years. So cool to see him win against one of those younger up and coming guys. Kaikara France getting the knockout win over Steve Urseg.
I know that Dana loved that.
Yeah, trying to get a little bit of juice back into the flyweight division after Davis and Figueiredo left, and Brandon Moreno has also been one of those fighters that's kind of up and down. So good to see a little bit of juice injected back into the flyweight division. And then we capped it off with Dracus Duplessis and Israel Adesanya, who I think we're all three really big fans of Izzy, and would have loved to seen him win this fight and come back on the heels of the loss to Sean Strickland and look like the Izzy that we love and know. And he kind of did, but not entirely. And so Kenny asked if he's cooked. I don't think he's cooked because the talent is still clearly there. Like, he is still clearly one of the best strikers in all of the UFC, even if he's, 60, 70% of what he was. But what I will say is he's taken a step back. He's slowed down 100%. A lot of shots that DDP was landing in that fight were shots that Izzy would have never gotten touched with 3 and 4 years ago.
Right.
I kind of feel like the Costa fight. Like, I feel like DDP's pretty slow. Like, he's not super fast. He's powerful. He's kind of awkward. He doesn't do anything special, which kind of reminds me of Paulo Costa a bit. And Izzy literally almost didn't get hit at all by him and put him away in the second round. And I think if you put that Izzy against DDP, he would smoke him. It would be not close at all. But Izzy's not the same fighter that, won all those title fights and defended that belt and kind of came out of nowhere to take over the UFC and become one of its biggest stars. And it really is crazy how quickly he's kind of come and gone. And I know he got into the sport older after an illustrious kickboxing career, but it is kind of sad to see that, even kind of just a slightly above average champion. I mean, Dricus du Plessis not bringing in any pay-per-view money. No one's really impressed by him. And Izzy still couldn't get the win in that fight. So it kind of sucks.
Knocking out Poatan and following that up with a loss against DDP or Strickland, then DDP. It's just like, man, I think he's cooked in the fact that I don't know if he's going to ever get this type of opportunity again. I just don't see it happening. Especially anytime soon.
This would have to
get
light
caught with a freaking rear naked choke.
Yeah.
It just and honestly, I've been used to watching Izzy over the years where another fighter's huffing and puffing and he's just like, he's perfectly cool and you're like, he's going to cruise to a win here.
Yep.
DDP started to get tired, but then I looked at Izzy, I'm like, damn, is he tired too?
In that third round.
One of the biggest things is his conditioning, and I was looking at him, I'm like, he's really tired. Like, he's out of it. You got to the championship rounds. And honestly, the conditioning showed. The fact that you get rear naked choked by DDP in the fourth round, like, that has something to do with the conditioning that he has done during this camp. His breath's not quite what it once was.
No, because we've seen him have 5-round wars where he's not even breathing heavy. And in that third round, he was putting it on DDP, but he started to fade towards the end. Like, once again, going back to that, 2-3 years ago, Israel Adesanya, he would have put DDP away in that round, 100%. Yes. But he didn't have the juice to do it anymore. He was shot.
Which is it's just wild. So I think, I mean, cooked is probably strong. I have real doubts about him ever getting back up to the top of the middleweight division.
Is he a cautionary tale though for? We love active champions, but has he been too active?
It's an interesting conversation. Is he too active, or is he just kind of content with what he's done in his career and doesn't put in the same amount of work? And I think you can draw a very, very eerily similar comparison to Kamaru Usman, who kind of came up through the ranks and earned his way to being one of the best welterweights of all time, and then it kind of just immediately ended. We saw him lose with the head kick knockout to Leon Edwards, and it just never really picked back up from there. We never saw him we haven't seen him at the same level yet, and not that he's not respectable, because I know y'all remember he fought Khamzat Chimaev not too terribly long ago, and he looked very respectable in that fight. He didn't look cooked, he didn't look washed, but he didn't look like the Kamaru Usman of old, who was literally unbeatable. So I think Kamaru and Izzy are very, very close, similar examples to each other.
And I think there's a confidence thing too that you lose when you just get beat, like he did against Sean Strickland too. There's just a confidence thing. Like you realize that you're not indestructible. You realize that you can get in there and get straight beat up by somebody for 5 rounds.
A sustained beat down for 5 rounds. What do you think did more damage? If we're making a line between Kamaru and between Izzy, the head kick knockout, the headshot that knocked him out, that felt like that took multiple fights off of his career. That knockout, Leon Edwards to Kamaru Usman. But it does feel like in a little bit of ways, like Izzy's confidence might have been battered by Sean Strickland over a 5-round beatdown. I mean, it was a sustained all 5 rounds, all 5 minutes of every round beatdown.
I think the biggest thing is, do they have anything to get up for anymore? I mean, both of those guys absolutely cleared out their division and they were lapping the competition.
Izzy was absolutely up for this fight against DDP. I mean, there was a historical.
There's a background to it. He had the home crowd,
all that stuff. I get it. I understand it. But DDP's not a draw. When's the last time we saw Izzy? When's the last time we saw Izzy look like Izzy? It was in the second fight against Alex Pereira.
Yeah,
there was nothing more. I mean, there's nothing better than that to get up for someone.
I get what you're saying. I think we could have that conversation about Sean Strickland, sure, but I don't know if we can have that conversation about this DDP fight. There was a lot of background to this thing.
There was a lot of bad blood between it, so maybe you're right, but I think that's part of just being a very active champion that wins a lot of fights. Is at some point, I think you just get content.
And I will say one more thing. Last note on this. There was a Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho.
Oh my God,
Rosenstrike.
And Rosenstrike, 3 rounds, wasn't even Tai didn't touch him. And Rosenstrike was fighting a perfect kickboxing fight, which he was 76, and I learned he was 76-8 in his freaking kickboxing career. Tai Tuivasa, let's see. Let me look at these stats. He landed 37 strikes. Jairzinho landed 92 total. 91 significant for Jairzinho, 37 for Tai. And there was an idiot
30-27
that scored at 30-27 for Tai Tuivasa. And I know what I did respect, though, because we always joke about, like, drug test that guy or just remove him from judging. Dana White walked directly up to this guy and said, get the hell out.
Removed him.
Get out. Because he did that hometown, like, obvious hometown scoring, because he clearly likes Tai Tuivasa. He's like, I can't have – you're calling my sports integrity into question. I can't have that. I did applaud Dana White for doing that, but on the front end, to even have that happen is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. Now, luckily, Jairzinho won by split decision, but once I heard 30-27, I go, oh shit, anything's on the table.
Yeah.
No, and if I would have gotten away with a decision there, that would have been the worst decision of all time.
It would have had to have been overturned. I mean, because there's just no way.
For sure.
I get concerned about martial arts, fighting, the combat sports when it comes to this kind of stuff, because there's always levels of cheating and always levels of just impropriety and things like that. And it just concerns me because boxing has suffered from that for years.
Yeah.
And you look at boxing now, outside of 1, 2, maybe 3 fights a year, it's just largely ignored because nobody really gives a shit anymore, because it's just kind of dirty and disgusting. And I'm like, man, please don't let UFC go down that path, because
and I don't think he will. And I know he doesn't have any control over the judges at the moment, but I just don't see a world.
He had enough control this weekend.
Yeah, he did. But I just
hit the road.
Yeah, I don't see any way that he allows it to get compromised. I don't think that will happen.
I mean, there are some safeguards in place, right? Like, the fighters are not signed to multiple different promotions, and they're having to, like, figure out that kind of stuff. It's the major league promotion in the sport is one promotion, and they're all under that one promotion. So there is that level of kind of safeguard. But man, dude, like that legitimately was the first time in the years that I've watched the UFC that I've been like, that's some real live cheating going on.
Yes.
There. Like real live cheating.
You like Tai Tuivasa doing shoeies, so you gave him a 30-27 decision, even though you know he didn't earn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
all right,
wild.
Kenny.
Crazy.
Let's
get to, I want to stick on the UFC for just a second, because I brought up the whole cautionary tale thing, because you've got some fights that are coming up. UFC 308 was announced. In my opinion, and I think y'all would agree with me, one of the biggest superstars in the UFC right now is Alex Pereira. He's just taken over the sport. He's an active champion. And we were told at the end of his last fight that he was going to take some time off. Well, they just announced the UFC 308 fight card, and he's fighting in the main event against Khalil Roundtree for the light heavyweight title. And I guess my concern is, like, I first saw that and I'm like, listen, I'm going to tune into an Alex Pereira fight, but Khalil Roundtree, like, that doesn't do a whole lot for me in terms of making me want to buy that card. And I'm just like, why is Alex getting back into the cage that quickly? And
the cards aren't as good. right now.
They're just not. Like, does it not feel like that there's a diluted cards in the UFC? Like, even look at the ESPN, the Noche, a UFC Noche fight. Like, it just feels kind of blah to me, right? The card. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on Alex jumping back in there so quick, but also just the UFC as a whole in terms of all the cards that are being put out?
Yeah, Christian, I think you'll have a longer response than me. My real thing here with the UFC is the UFC has to decide who they're going to invest in going forward, because I think all the guys you expected to get back to the top of that mountain have not been able to do that. Kamaru probably out of the question right now. Izzy for right now out of the question. You don't have Francis Ngannou. John Jones has been off for some time. Volk out of the question. He's put together a string of losses and he's been way too active. Like, you just have these guys that were your draws, and Conor McGregor won't fight till next year, and he had to back out of a fight. You ran into some bad luck, and you also have to decide, like, who are we putting money behind? Who are we promoting going into the future? Because the guys that you thought would be there for an extended period of time aren't. Like, that's just where I'm at right now. That's what, from the outside looking in, I think they have this identity crisis. And we talk about it in the NBA all the time. Like, LeBron and Steph and KD are going to be out soon. Who are you latching on to? Now they're starting to latch on to Anthony Edwards and John Morant and guys like that. I don't think the UFC has decided exactly who that next generation of draw is going to be. They're living a little bit in the past.
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold. I think that is a very fair point. A lot of these long-standing, established champions that you've really been able to rely on over the past 3 to 5 years, a lot of them are kind of aging out past their prime. And if they had people that were kind of already at that point of superstardom, it would be a pretty seamless transition, which I feel like a lot of time in the UFC, that's kind of what just happens naturally. And maybe not so naturally. A lot of times it's who's being pushed and who's working their way up the ranks, and they're doing that on purpose based on matchups and stuff. But they have a lot of guys that are on the precipice right now. A lot of guys that are right there and might be superstars and might be big draws, but it hasn't fully fleshed itself out yet. I mean, you got Sean O'Malley, who is right underneath superstardom, maybe has already passed that one. He's close.
That was the only example I was going to use, is like, right. Hey, this is a guy you latch on to going forward.
But then you've got other guys who are, starting to be big draws, but haven't quite reached that championship pedigree yet. Ian Gary, Paddy Pimblett, Raul Rosas, all these guys that are, pretty common household names, but aren't at the championship level yet to be the draws that they could potentially one day be. So I think that's a part of it. But to me, the bigger part of it is the UFC is really trying to push their non-pay-per-view cards right now, their fight nights, whether they're on ESPN or ABC or ESPN Plus or wherever, and just continuing to try to push that brand recognition and continuing to try to push that notion of, it doesn't have to be a pay-per-view for you to get really high-quality fights. Because if you look at some of these fight nights that have happened over the last several months, or some of the ones coming up, you go, well, that could be a full card of a pay-per-view minus a championship fight on there. So I think they've spread themselves really thin in that aspect. And so at least over the last several months, maybe the majority of this year, we just haven't seen like the top heavy cards that we're used to. When you look at them and you go, oh my gosh, can't believe so-and-so is fighting on the same night as so-and-so, and we got multiple title fights. Outside of 300, there just really hasn't been too many major marquee events. And then the last point, and Kenny, you can move us on. Another thing that's going on right now is we're seeing a lot of guys be way smarter than they have been in years past with their activity. Alex Pereira is a standout nowadays as far as how active he is. Because you look at other stars. Justin Gaethje's the one that comes to mind immediately. Justin Gaethje's not extremely active. Michael Chandler's a big draw. Michael Chandler's not really super active. A lot of these guys that are big stars also are only going to fight maybe once a year, which spreads that talent out even more. So that's my 2 cents on it. But Kenny, you can take us to the next topic.
Let's go to the next topic. Topic number 2. We got some rookie quarterback updates. We're in the second exhibition games for NFL quarterback or NFL teams. some pretty, I guess, important players in the rookie class this year at the quarterback position. I want to run through a few of them. I know one of the guys we talked about prior to the show starting was Bo Nix, just showing himself out well for the Denver Broncos. What are your guys' thoughts on the rookie quarterback so far? Who's impressed you? Who's not impressed you?
You want to start with Caleb Williams?
Yeah, we can definitely start there.
I thought he's looked good. He's just holding the ball. He's holding on to the ball too long. If you look at guys in the preseason who have the highest snap to throw, average, he's at 3.63, which is second worst. Behind, guess who? Justin Fields, 3.93. So he's going to have to fix that. But here's the thing. He's got so much surrounding him that I don't have the same concerns I had with Justin Fields. And that throw to Rome Odunze, just like, good Lord, man. You just see it. It pops. And I think he's had more early pops than I ever thought with Justin Fields. Yeah. And I think there's a consistency there that you can trust a little way more than Justin Fields. So I've liked what I've seen from Caleb Williams for the most part.
Yeah, he's been really impressive as far as getting out of the pocket, making plays, doing Caleb Williams things. And he really is electric. Like, let's just be honest. When he's making plays, he's absolutely electric. But at the same time, you can kind of see where the rookie mistakes are going to be: holding on to the ball too long, like you mentioned, taking some unnecessary sacks, taking unnecessary risk with his arm. The same issues that he had in college, I think we'll see a fair amount of this year, but they will be outnumbered by the big, splashy highlight reel plays. So Caleb Williams has been really good, but to me, the most impressive has been Jaden Daniels.
Jaden, really? Okay, let's talk it.
I know we haven't seen
opinions here.
I know we haven't seen a ton from him. In the first game, it was basically one drive. He hit the big 42-yard throw to Diami Brown down the right sideline, and then ended up scoring the rushing touchdown. So in that game, the first game, he shows, extending plays, making big throws, using his legs. And in this last game, it was just following the game script. We know Cliff Kingsbury is going to move really fast. Going to be a lot of, design throws in there, quick throws, get the ball out of your hand, keep the chains moving. I think he was 10 of 12 for 91 yards, and then also had, another 15 or 20 rushing yards maybe. And I think he's just showing us what he showed us at LSU, that he's going to be accurate. He's going to be a master eventually of running this offense. He's going to use his legs and be extremely dangerous, and he's going to make the most out of the talent around him. Not that they have a ton of it, but I think he's going to maximize Terry McLaurin. I think Brian Robinson's going to be huge for him in the backfield. I think he'll utilize Austin Eckler as well as the RB, as his RB2. I just love – I think it's such a seamless fit with him and Cliff Kingsbury. I know Cliff Kingsbury isn't the best offensive coordinator in the league, but I don't really think Jaden Daniels could ask for a better OC in his first year as a starting quarterback, because we saw what Cliff Kingsbury did with Kyler Murray in his rookie year.
Now my answer here to who's been the best, it's Bo Nix. I'm surprised you had a different take on this, because he's just been so consistent, man. And I think it's twofold. One, I think him going from Auburn with multiple different offensive coordinators there, learning different terminology, learning different playbooks, even under Gus, that helped. But then he went to Oregon with Will Stein, really good offensive play caller, really big on snap to throw, get the ball out, go make something happen downfield as quick as you can, use good footwork. I think his understanding of multiple different offenses, just knowing football, has helped this transition really quickly. But also, Will Stein at Oregon was huge about instead of, hey, just drop back, read this thing out, go figure it out. He would scheme guys open.
Yeah.
And he would tell you how to read it. Like, he would make you go progression, just sort of get back to your guys. But he would scheme guys open. And there's some coaches that are good at that, some coaches that fall back and aren't great. They just try to create one-on-ones and throw to them. And I think you see that with Cliff Kingsbury. Mike Norvell did a lot of that. He would scheme guys open, sure, but you would throw to the one-on-one most of the time. That's just good football. But when you look at the similarities between Will Stein and the way he schemes guys open and Sean Payton, the way he schemes guys open, you take advantage of these soft zones. You take advantage of the holes in the zone. You break off different routes, and you know where guys are going to be, and you create a rapport with these guys you have on the outside. I think the similarities between what he was doing in the passing game at Oregon and what he's doing with Sean Payton, they definitely show through. If you know anything about Sean Payton with Drew Brees, it was, let's get to this 5-step drop. You hit your back foot, ball should be out.
Ball out of the hand.
It should be out of your hand. You're seeing the exact same things. You're seeing a confidence he has with letting go of the ball. You're seeing an accuracy that he has with letting go of the ball. And the other thing that really gives me hope about his upside, because that's the one question. You're like, okay, maybe he's a high floor guy because he came in at 23 years old. He's played a lot of ball. He is who he is. Doesn't have this long developmental runway like Drake May or some of these other guys, Caleb Williams. But what you'll see is the fact that he's got legs. Like he's got some ability to get out of the pocket, do things off platform that Drew Brees never could do.
Right.
So I think there's just more at his disposal that we weren't necessarily giving him credit for coming out of Oregon. And I love the way he's looked. He's 23 for 30 in 2 quarters of play. Really. 23 for 30, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
No takeaways, hasn't really taken a sack. Like the guy has it going. And here's the question that I had. If this is who he is, right? And what he did at Oregon shows through, where he was a big touchdown guy, really took care of the ball, did not turn the ball over. That's why he was so good at Oregon. And he was really efficient. If we see these same things continue to happen for the Broncos, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, why not with the Broncos going into this year, next year, year after that? Next year, certainly, because you'll have some of the dead money away from the Russ deal. You'll be able to sign some more guys, surround him with more talent. But even this year, like, I remember last year the Texans were picked to win 4.5 games, and they had a quarterback just come in and elevate everyone around him. And through 2 games, I know it's preseason, but he's been playing against mostly starters. I have seen Bo Nix elevate everyone around him. So I'm going to be watching the Broncos season very closely, because I am really, really high, if you can't tell, on Bo Nix and what he's been doing.
Yeah. Now, I'm a little more cautiously optimistic than you, because I remember one Kenny Pickett being incredible in the preseason and then falling flat on his face. And
but come on, don't leave out critical details. Don't leave out critical details.
What critical details?
Steelers are shit on offense. They had
so were the Broncos.
They have a defensive head coach who just wants to do game control. Sean Payton is the head coach of the Broncos.
And they were terrible on offense last year. Terrible point. They were horrible on offense last year.
What do you mean?
They were horrible on offense last year.
They weren't great. But
they weren't good at all.
We're talking about Sean Payton, who for years and years and years had Drew Brees throwing for 5,000 yards a year.
Fair.
At the end of the day, like, I don't know if you could be like, okay, well, the Steelers situation with all these different OCs in a place where they don't really care about the offense because Mike Tomlin's like a 20th century coach. I don't know if you can do the same thing with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. But listen, I get your point in general about preseason doesn't always lead to great results in the regular season. But this one just feels different to me. I'm eyeing it.
And you could be totally right. So we will see. All right, Kenny, last point.
Last point. Y'all know I love drama. I love tea. I love all of it. Sure. I wanted to end the show with some comments made by our best friend down in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa. Is that how you Tagovailoa?
Tagovailoa, close enough.
Close enough? Yeah, I'm good. Tua came out.
Nico, I am Leava.
There you go. Tua came out today in a pretty candid interview. You never really get to hear these guys go full on candid, just say what they feel. There's been a lot of questions, I think, about his relationship with former head coach Brian Flores, right? Like, Brian was in Miami with him first couple of years in the league. They bring in Mike McCarthy. Not Mike McCarthy. Is it Mike McCarthy? Mike McDaniels. Thank you. And he just has done really well the last couple of seasons. And he came out and said today, they asked, tell us about your relationship. And he said, he said this, he goes, to put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you, you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you're the best fit for this, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And he says, and then you hear it, no matter what it is, the good or the bad, you hear it more and more, you start to believe it. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person telling you things that you don't want to hear or probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start believing that about yourself. I mean, gosh, dog, dude.
Going after Brian Flores.
Yeah, he went after Brian Flores, right?
I'm gonna say, and I was always a Brian Flores fan. Like, I think he's a great coach. I don't think he ever should have been a head coach if that's how he reacted to a top 5 pick at the quarterback position. Because it might not have been It might not have been his guy. It might not have been who he wanted. But dude, you gotta do something better with that. And I think Brian Flores is one of the best defensive minds in the league, bar none. He's incredible. He is a defensive genius. But to be of the opinion that he was of Tua and to think that there was no shot he would ever succeed and that he sucked and that someone else should have been there is kind of junk, because Mike McDaniel has proved that if you have the right system, a quarterback like Tua, who is kind of that point guard like quarterback, works perfectly. So there was always a system that Tua was going to flourish in. It might not have been what Brian Flores wanted to run, wanting to run a more pro style offense. But it's just wild, dude. Like he could have made it work because he's great on the defensive side of the ball. But to be in that camp about Tua is just kind of wild.
Yeah, I agree. And what blows me away is I've been around a lot of coaches in my day, and I think I've seen some coaches that are really good at like managing personalities, right? Like, hey, I'll give you a kick in the ass, but this other guy, I have to just give him confidence all the time because he doesn't take hard coaching. You know what I mean? It sounds like, and you see a lot of defensive guys with this type of attitude where they're just, hard ass all the time, trying to break you down to build you up. It sounds like Brian Flores is like that all the time. Like
everybody,
a real strict guy to everybody. But I don't think that's the best way to manage personalities, especially in the NFL.
Especially a quarterback.
You know what I mean? Especially at the quarterback position. You can't break down a guy, tell him he's complete shit, and expect good results.
No.
And I agree with what Tua said. Like, the more you get told every day that you're a piece of shit and that you suck, the more you believe it.
Yeah.
You start believing it.
Yeah.
And then to build up confidence when you believe that you're a terrible quarterback, that's hard to do. You're scared to make a mistake. You're scared to speak up. You just feel worthless. And I hearing that about Brian Flores, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest because he wanted to go get Deshaun Watson to replace Tua Tagovailoa, if you'll remember back in the day.
Yep.
I just think it's a terrible attitude that Brian Flores held there. Defensive guy, doesn't understand the offensive side of the ball and the personalities and how you have to manage them. I agree with your sentiment. Great defensive coach, probably should not have been a head coach. It seems pretty simple. And Mike McDaniel sort of seems the opposite of that. Very positive
100%.
to everybody, and lets his position coaches get on your ass if they need to.
Yeah,
it's sort of good cop, bad cop with him. Whereas probably in that Brian Flores locker room, it was bad cop, bad cop, bad cop, bad cop. Couldn't escape it. I feel for Tua because Tua is a talented player. He really is. And for him to get treated that way and for him to just be thrown in this trash bin by this coach, like you're never going to be good enough. I think that's awful. And if you guys watch The Bear by chance?
Yeah. I've watched a little bit of it, not a whole lot.
Carmy had like this boss who would always sit over his shoulder when he was working in this 5-star restaurant with just like all the Michelin stars. He's like, "You're a piece of shit. You're talentless. Yeah. You're awful." And part of that like built Carmy up, but part of that also destructed Carmy. Like part of that is the reason that Carmen could never really achieve what he wanted to achieve. Things got in the way all the time. I just think to have that attitude all the time and to do that to somebody is shitty. I just think it's shitty.
Yeah. I mean, I might be wrong on this, but it feels like to me, the position of quarterback already has enough pressure and enough just intensity and scrutiny on a daily basis by people outside of the locker room that you don't have to like. It feels like the locker room, your team should be your safe place to be able to be yourself, make mistakes if you have, like if you like we all do, and not feel like, man, my job is on the line here every single time. Like I'm a terrible person. I'm not good. This, that, and the third.
And just put yourself in that. Like that would be a toxic,
that would suck,
terrible workplace to live in every day. If you just feel like they're going to fire me any given day. They're going to cut me. They don't want me here.
And honestly, kudos to Tua for like not only A, sticking that out, but like B, seeing it through and being the quarterback that he is now. Like he could have easily been on like the Zach Wilson trajectory or any of these other quarterbacks that haven't panned out, that their confidence was just shot. Like they had all the talent, obviously. I mean, Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick in the draft, but his confidence just got so shot that he could never get it back. And with Tua, he was able to kind of work through that. He wasn't even terrible during the Brian Flores days, and keep competing, and then eventually like be one of the better quarterbacks in the league and kind of stick that out and see that through and not fully lose confidence is kind of wild.
It does make me question Brian Flores, just like football, especially offensive knowledge. The fact that he really thought Tua wasn't shit. Like he really thought Tua couldn't do anything in the NFL.
Right. Kinda
like
wild.
that's kind of makes me question him a little bit. Like, dude, come on. Yeah. You're not that dumb, are you? Like you saw the tape.
You got to have seen the talent, right? Like, yeah, of course.
He doesn't have like a big arm, but he was always accurate. Always spread the ball around, got the ball out. Make him do that. Don't force a square peg into a round hole. 100%. Do what he's good at. He never really did what Tua was good at. But I will say, 2 years of Brian Flores was 19 wins. I think 20 wins
for
in the regular season for Mike McDaniel.
Yep.
31 of the 39 wins have been by Tua. So Tua has always been a solid quarterback. He just needed to stay on the field. And we've seen that be the case. That's why he got paid.
Yep. All right, boys, we are going to call it a day on that note. We appreciate everybody for joining us this week. If you are watching on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, and comment there. If you're listening, wherever you get your podcast, you can do the same there. Also, head over to bluffcitymedia.co. Check out all the articles, videos, and podcasts we got on there. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.